In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how you can work with text. So far, you've learned how to work with text on a path, bringing in individual letters, and this time I'm going to show you how to make a text box. Over on the side here, you will find that you'll see your text tool. You're going to create a new layer, and you're just going to create a box. So here are the constraints of where all of your information will go. Right now I went online and I actually copied and pasted some text from Coca-Cola's ingredients list. If I start typing in or pasting that text in, it's going to be using Tecton Pro Bold Condensed at 72 points. As it's blinking, I can see that that is quite a large font. So I'm just going to change it now, and I'll start with 18. And I'll hit my Control V to bring in all the ingredients. Also, the font is white, as you can see up here. If I select it all, I can change my font. And you may wonder, why is it so far apart? If I bring up a text box, this gives me a lot more variations. You can work with your size. You can work with the spacing. So this is the spacing in between. If I hit it as auto, it's going to think for itself, or what I could do is I can pick the spacing that I would like. If you wanted to stretch out the font, you can set it at 200% or whatever you would like. If you want to make it wider, you can see what happens when you set that to 200%. You can also add more spacing between the letters. You can add a faux bold. You can add a faux italic. You can put them all as uppercase. And feel free to play around with them. I'm not going to go too much more into them. The reason why it looks kind of funny right now is this font is not rendered. Once I am done and I get out of my command here, it's going to look okay. So don't worry if you're in this process and it's looking really odd. I'm also going to write ingredients and highlight the word ingredients and make that a bold. Or I could have gone up here and picked bold extended, and maybe that's a bold I'd prefer. And once I'm happy, I'm just going to click away. So I'm looking here and I'm thinking, you know what, I really want to rotate this the way that ingredients lists are rotated. So I'm going to bring up my transform control box, Control T. And once you move your cursor on the outside, you'll see the double arrows. That means that you can rotate it. As I'm rotating, if I hold Shift, I will get it perfectly rotated on the 90 degrees. Again, holding Shift, you can scale in the corners to make sure that everything is scaled in proper proportion. And I'm just gonna rotate it again and show you how you can rotate. So when you're happy, you're going to hit Enter and get out of the command. And I'm just going to bring my ingredients over to the side here. Sometimes it's great if you want to have your ingredients show through, and sometimes it's really hard. So what I'm going to do, I'm just zooming in here with my zoom tool. And if you want to move around the canvas, a really quick way to do it is, instead of using the hand to move around, I just like to hold the space bar and it brings up the hand. So here I am thinking that I can still read this, it is legible, but let's just say that you might be in an instance where it is not. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the layer below and add a new layer just under my ingredients list. I'm going to call this Box. And for this one, I want to make it white, just double clicking on here, making sure that it's white. And then I'm going to go and hold down my shape and pick the rectangle tool. I'm just going to make a box right behind the ingredients. You may want the box to be bold like this, a really strong white, or again, playing with your different options here, you can actually make it blend a little bit better. So I can go to soft light. And right now I'm seeing a stroke around the box. That's just to say that it's selected. If you did actually want a stroke, you could go up at the top and select a stroke. I'll pick a blue one so you can really see it. And you can bring up your points. And if you have a stroke and then you decide later you don't want a stroke, you can go back up to this box and just hit this little red line, and that will remove your stroke. If I click away and I move to a different layer, you will now see that there is actually no stroke on this. If you like this, but you're finding it still a bit too bold, just bump down your opacity values and it'll blend in a little bit better. So that's how to work with a text box. Let's say that you just want to start typing. All you have to do with that is, I'm just going to actually change my font for now. Oh, it actually changed the font because I did not create a new layer. So that's a good lesson learned. I'm going to create a new layer and just start typing. And here is the name of my product. Not very creative, but here we go. What you can do, because fonts are actually vector, and vector can be scaled without losing quality. If you want, you can bring up your transform box and you can scale this to any way that you like, and you won't lose any quality because it is vector based. So images, you cannot do this, but vectors you can. And once you start playing around with it, if you don't like the font, you can work with your character box. You can go onto the text tool here, and then you'll get all your options at the top. You can play around with it here if you want to change the color. And if you wanted to color pick, all you have to do is move your cursor over top of an image, and you can color pick. And I'm actually going to make that a little bit darker so it stands out. And then let's say that you want to add a drop shadow, just like you were taught in your logos. I can right click and go to blending options. And I'm going to add an outer glow. Clicking on the word, not just over on the check mark. I'm going to keep it at this yellow for now. Screen is fine because I do want it quite light. I will bring up the size and hit OK. Using my move tool, I can move it around. And that is how you can work with the font. Another way is I'm going to create a new layer. I can play over with my text box. And by the way, if this collapses and you lose it, it should be over on the A. But if it's not, all you have to do is either you can go to Window, Character Box, or you can just bring it up here. Whenever you're on any of the tools on the side, all your options come to the top. And here is my box again. So I'm just going to work with it here. I'm going to move it down. And this time, going back to my text tool, I'm going to add a warp to it. And I'll play with the arc. You can play with your bends. You can adjust your horizontal distortion, maybe your vertical. And if you want it back to 0, just hit 0 and then you can press OK. And again, you can put some blending options if you like. And that's pretty much it for how to work with text. One thing I do want to show you is about your history. Let's say that you're working with something and you made a mistake. You can always hit Control Z, Command Z. That'll bring you back to your last action. You can hit the step backwards. But if you go to Window History, here you have your history. And if you just keep clicking on the words here, you can go back to whatever your system default has, unless you change it. Usually you have about 20 steps, sometimes up to 50, depending on what your system is set at. And you literally can just go back to all the different ones that you're working on. So don't think that you're actually deleting these, because you can just click and go all the way back. If you wanted to delete them in your history, you can hit the delete and you would delete that. But there's no real point in doing that when you can just go back and forth this way without actually deleting it.